Welcome to Oxford News This Week. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Terry Stiles. And in this week's local news, never leave your little ones or pets alone in a car. And how does a truck cross the village line? Very carefully. Find out why that might be a concern for local truckers.
Stay tuned and learn more about these stories and others. The Oxford News begins right now. Sheriff's deputies were called to North Lake Lapeer Road store by the store's loss prevention officer when a woman was observed hiding products in her purse. She was stopped when trying to leave without paying for the merchandise, and officers cited her for third-degree retail fraud over $100.
Breezewood Street residents need to keep their cool, literally. A Breezewood Street resident came home to a damaged porch and a missing window unit air conditioner. Officers do have a potential lead, so look out to the frigid theft, and the investigation continues.
A Hardwood Drive resident discovered this week that his computer has been hacked and a digital degenerate stole all of the account information on the computer, using the man's credit card to buy a $900 laptop computer.
Officers were called to a downtown parking lot to find the person responsible for leaving a child and dog unattended in the vehicle. Officers found the driver, who seemed to get off with just a warning of the dangers of leaving a child alone in the car. She could have received a citation for endangerment of a child.
Addison Township Planning Commission has reviewed a 13-acre parcel of Rochester Road, Mayfield Lane for the possible site of a new gas station and party store. The Bonji Holders Group and the Planning Commission agree that the plan meets the criteria of the township's master plan, but residents have concerns about added traffic noise and disruption to the environment. The intended owner and operator is a local resident, Vince Boji, and he believes that the business will be good for Addison residents because they won't have to drive a long distance for fuel, and because there is currently only one gas station in the area, and competition would be a good thing.
Trucks are everywhere, but who wants them on their road? Neither village residents nor township habitants want the haulers in front of their yards. So the village council is faced with sorting out the route. Just after the village shelled out more than $500,000 in repairs to the Cemetery Hill on Burdick, village citizens who live and work on Burdick petitioned to have the truck weight and time limits restrictions on that road. Residents say that they should not continue to pay for road damage caused by the big trucks that travel through the village to other destinations. Noise, structural vibrations, and Pollyant user safety is also at issue. Township residents protested the proposal as they don't want the restrictions to result in traffic in their neighborhoods. Village Council will again discuss the overburdened village street dilemma at its upcoming September 9th meeting.
And two men protesting against the oil pipeline company from Canada, Enbridge, were again arrested. This time it was one man from Livonia and another from Lansing. They were arrested for trespassing and obstructing a police officer engaged in the performance of his duty. The two men secured themselves with a bicycle lock to the back of a company truck located on iconic gravel property of Lakeville Road in Oxford Township. Enbridge Oil and Gas Company, a Canadian firm, is using the iconic property as a staging location for construction of a new oil pipeline through Oxford and Addison Townships. The men were released by the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office pending further investigation. The protesters say they want local residents to know past and potential dangers of future oil spills.
The Oxford Village Planning Commission readdressed the Edison Alley Street construction project and proposed several changes to the plan, which includes downsizing a 28-foot street wide and a 4-foot bike path to a 24-foot wide street and no bike path. Wow, that was easy not to say. The new proposal also eliminates a 16-foot wide street entry to the alley from M24. The changes would also include the alley be a dead-end street with a T turnaround at the end. Tree plantings for privacy were also noted by the commission, and the changes have yet to be approved by the Village Council.
Just look at the happy smile on little Clear Lake Elementary second grader Max Lanny. Banbury Cross Therapeutic Equestrian Center at 1223 Brower Road in Metamora Township provided a special fun day of horseback riding for students of all ages. The riding program helps kids with physical and congenital disabilities to grow emotionally and socially while improving their overall physical fitness. For information about programs and volunteer opportunities at Banbury Cross, telephone number is 248-628-7433. Well, Terry, what's going on?
There's been a lot of issues going on in the village this week. Between the protest, it seems to be a mecca for protesters all of a sudden, and that gives Koenig some recognition, I guess. And the Planning Commission, the Township Planning Commission had quite a meeting last night, so we weren't able to elaborate on that story, but that's something I'd like to talk about next week. There's village residents, township residents out on the Drainer, Newman, Stanton area that are not happy about a proposed PUD development going in there, which would be multiple houses in a densely populated houses in a large area. So the people in that community are not really happy about changing the zoning from 5 acres to lot sizes. So I really want to get on that next week.
Yeah, there are a lot of local concerns, and a PUD is a kind of a special process. It takes some time to resolve.
A lot of work.
And so citizens will have some input, before this is all done.
And please do go talk to your township councils, to your planning commissions. People are coming to the village talking about that, not wanting trucks on Burdick, and I don't blame them. I don't blame the people. I lived on a truck route when I was in the village, and it's really hard on your homes. And some of those homes are over 120 years old. So
nobody wants the traffic, though.
No, I don't blame them. Not in my backyard.
Yeah, and the people out in the country, not my backyard.
Yeah, I've heard that said so many times.
So they're going to make helicopters out of these trucks or something, get them in and out.
Well, somebody made a good point at that rezoning meeting. They purchased that property with not knowledge that it was 5 acres per home. It's the same thing. The people that don't want the trucks to be routed, they purchased that property knowing that was not a truck route. While people in the village have always known. I mean, it's been gravel truck city since before I was born, I think.
But at one time,
that's
probably
a tough argument.
At one time, there's probably a few trucks
Not
going
as
by.
many.
Now there's a whole bunch of trucks.
And, they're not, I don't know what it is, but the truck drivers, and I'm not going to say any specific truck company, but one is located right in the village. Those guys drive so fast. They don't acknowledge the 25 mile-an-hour speed limit, nor do they acknowledge 30 or 40. They are in a hurry to get to where they have to go because they get paid by the load. So there's a lot to be said for taking responsibility of keeping those trucks at the speed limit.
Well, the good news is the fact that Burdick Street is improved.
Yes,
you don't have all the bumps. And
easy to go fast on it now.
You can go faster now. I'm trying to curb
but
that.
But don't go fast on Burdick. Adhere to that 25 mile-an-hour speed limit. People live on those routes. They don't want people going by at 50 miles an hour. Same with the that PUD development out there. Newman Road seems to be a thoroughfare for Orion and Oxford. Stop it. People live on those roads. Pay attention to the speed limits. I'm done. I'm off my soapbox.
We're going to have to extend the show, Terry.
I know. That's it for Oxford News this week. If you'd like to learn more about these stories and others, first watch us on OCTV. And if you can't do that, go pick up a copy of the Oxford Leader at our local stores.
And coming up next on OCTV, Oxford Local Sports with Andy Curtis, Oxford School News with John Oetjens, and join us with Auto Talk and Science in the News with Dave Kenny.
I'm Terry Stiles, and this is Oxford News This Week. We are bringing your news closer to home.
And I'm Elgin Nichols. Remember, always be kind to your friends and neighbors, and thanks for watching.
Don't miss Schooling Around with John Oetjens, weekdays at 11 in the morning and 10 at night, keeping it local.
I'm going back to school, no more vacation, I gotta get my say.
Welcome to this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication Automotive News. In our first story, 2 years out of high school, Evan Fischbach is earning $40,000 a year, and his secret? Shop class. Fischbach, 19, has known he wanted to work on cars ever since he took an automotive class in his junior year of high school in Saline, Michigan. His college-educated parents wondered if he was aiming too low. Then, when Fischbach was still a junior, a local auto dealer desperate for mechanics hired him as an apprentice in the service bay. Now, he's earning about 3 times as much as the average 19-year-old high school grad and slightly more than the national median, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Friends weren't interested in auto shop when I suggested it, and now I think they wish they had tried it, said Fischbach, who works at LaFontaine Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. I'm not rich, but I'm not hurting either. Fischbach is an all-too-rare success story that educators, legislatures, and executives are eager to replicate. With schools focused on preparing kids for college, shop class has gone the way of stenography class in much of the U.S. Companies from Toyota, Motor Corporation, to Siemens AG and International Business Machine are pushing high schools to graduate skilled students with real-world skills and business needs. The message is getting through. This year, for the first time in a decade, the U.S. government boosted funding for high school and college vocational education, though the $1.1 billion war chest is $188 million smaller than it was in 2004. Proponents say re-emphasizing vocational education will help reverse the hollowing out of American middle class and combat rising inequality. Wage growth since 2009 has been the weakest since World War II, even as the rich get richer. There are 29 million middle education jobs that pay more than $35,000 a year, considered a threshold to the middle class, according to Georgetown University research. Of those, 22.9 million require only high school or some post-high school training. Fischbach's job pays enough to launch him on a once familiar trajectory: start a family, buy a home, and pay taxes. 50 years ago, most American kids in middle and high school attended shop class where they learned to make ashtrays, rebuild engines, weld metal, and even market products. As the space race gave way to the high-tech era, policymakers decided such skills were unnecessary. College prep classes gradually supplanted shop, which by then was perceived as a place for slackers and stoners. Yet, businesses can't find enough people to fix cars and work in factories. Mike Hughes, the service manager who hired Fischbach, finds himself competing with rival dealerships to recruit kids right out of high school. If he can't find candidates there, he has to train them from scratch. Nobody wants their kids to be a mechanic, said Hughes, who estimates Fischbach eventually will pull down $60,000 a year. They just don't know how good a living it is, he says. And on the recall front, spiders drawn to gasoline vapors and weaving webs that block a hose to vent those vapors have caused Suzuki Motor of America to recall 19,000 Kawasaki mid-size sedans from the 2010 to 2013 model years. Airflow blocked in the car's evaporative emission system can cause negative pressure in the fuel tank, which can lead to cracks, which could cause leaks that increase risk of fire, said the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. This is a similar problem to one experienced by some Mazda 6 owners. Mazda Motor Corporation has recalled the Mazda 6 twice since 2011 because of spiders building webs in their ventilation hoses. No crashes or injuries have been reported in relation to the issue, Suzuki told NHTSA. Suzuki last year stopped selling cars in the U.S. market after nearly 3 decades, so NHTSA and Suzuki advised Kawasaki owners to take their sedans to authorized service providers. That's in quotes. Letters the company sent to car owners and filed with NHTSA do not identify where these service providers are, but owners can call a customer service line at 800-934-0934 to find out. The remedy to be applied is a filter on a ventilation line to keep the spiders out. Well, that's all for this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and as always, may the wind be at your back as you cruise down life's highways. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television, and we'll be right back.
You're watching Oxford Community Television, keeping it local.
I'm John Oetjens, and welcome to the Oxford Wildcat School Update. It's that time of year again, teachers getting rooms ready, final finishing touches being put on the buildings, and administrators preparing to launch new programs. We stopped by Assistant Superintendent Jim Schwar's office to see what's happening there.
As we get going this year, a couple of our really big initiatives are really moving toward the whole notion of data, classroom data that supports the teacher with decision-making relative to classroom instruction. In other words, collecting student information, student performance information that is right down to the specific standard and benchmark that the student is to accomplish and achieve mastery on for that year as set by the state or the national government if it's the Common Core. So we're really working to become much more scientific with our instruction.
One of the more noticeable changes will be with elementary school report cards.
Our elementaries are going to a new report card. And that report card is going to be a standards-based report card. So it's going to inform the parent, specifically to what skills their child has strengths and areas of improvement that are needed. It's going to be a much more telling report card than what they've received before.
So are they going to get A's, B's, C's, D's, etc.? Or
this report card's a little different. This report card is going to be a non-graded report card. So we've kind of gone away from the A, B, C, D format that we've all been raised on and are familiar with, and moving toward what seems to be more of a national trend of really non-graded, standards-specific reporting. So a parent will receive a report card that will show if their child met a standard or an expectation, if they're progressing toward that, or if there's insufficient progress toward that.
Assistant Superintendent Dr. Jim Schwarz. Our next stop was the Oxford Virtual Academy, where we caught up with Janet Schell and Peggy Boggs, who bring us up to date over there.
We're adding Sterling Heights, and we are adding the Harbor and Taylor. So we've got some new exciting programs for community partnerships. We're going to continue on with Bryant's Karate, Flip Spot, The Link, our Yara group, Renaissance Homeschool group. Our lab at Kettering is opening again on the 8th of September, so our students up in Flint will have that opportunity. Peggy, you want to talk about some of the new curriculum?
We do have some new curriculum. I'm the middle school mentor and have been asking for a couple of years now to continue to add some programs so my middle schoolers have the great choices that some of our high schoolers have. We've added Connexus this year, which is a Pearson product, and I'm excited about it. I think that it's going to be an engaging program for our middle school students.
21 of 46 international students arrived the other day from China and went through orientation at the high school. I asked Chun Chun Tang, one of the program's coordinators, how the kids are prepared for this kind of change.
Our partner schools did a great job on pre-departure orientation, so the students were very well trained on what to expect, what to bring to the United States, and also the school, the district kept in regular communication with the students so that they know that we are anticipating, to welcome them into our community. And so for both the partner schools on China's side and us here in Oxford, we prepare the students as much as we can so that they would feel prepared to come to the United States and leave home for the first time.
We also checked in with Karen Bissett, Nutrition Service Director for the Oxford schools. She tells us how food services is keeping up with the latest government requirements.
Our smarter snacks that previously known as competitive foods, they have made many changes of what we can sell. It has to be a whole grain, a fruit or a vegetable for snacks.
Is this a government program?
Yes, it is USDA federally funded school program that we have limits on what our beverages, what we can sell now in the high school and middle school. Middle school is basically waters and milks and 100% juice. Our high school can have 20-ounce items, but they have to be under a certain calorie amount. So the students coming back will see like Gatorade G2s in the 20-ounce. They'll see the Powerade in a 20-ounce. but it's the lighter version instead of a regular Gatorade, and that is due to the sodium.
We're going to send our Kyle Snage over to do a taste test and report back to us next week. That's the Oxford School News for this week. Dave Kenny is up next with Science in the News, then Andy Curtis with sports. This is Oxford Community Television, keeping it local.
Don't miss Schooling Around with John Oetjens, weekdays at 11 in the morning and 10 at night, keeping it local.
I'm going back to school, no more vacation, I gotta get myself.
Hello, I'm Rod Wright, and I'm here with sports. I'm filling in for Andy Curtis, and I'll tell you what, he picked the wrong day to go on vacation because Oxford football had their first game, and we beat the Romeo Bulldogs 28-20. Let me do a recap of the game here. Glacier Wellington in the first quarter scores the first touchdown of the day, a 7-0 in the first quarter, but Romeo tied the game 7-7 on a 4-yard TD pass from Hurley to Mitch Humbuck. However, in the second, Wellington hit a 26-yard pass to William Horn to put them up 14-7. Romeo again came back with a 35-yard pass with the really super talented Hurley, the quarterback for Romeo, to Brad Tanner. So we go into the in halftime tied up at 14-all. However, we come back and it's the third quarter and it is all Oxford. We take 19 plays to go 82 yards and take over 10 minutes off of the clock to make it 21-14. That was the exciting factor of the game. That the team by taking that time off of the clock, it just took the wind out of the sails for Romeo. Now they did answer with the 11-yard touchdown pass again by Hurley to tie the game, but then William Horn blocks the extra point, so it's 21-20. That puts Oxford up, and Scotty Stubenranch later on in the fourth quarter, he gets a 20-yard touchdown run. He had 123 yards. That's over 6 yards per carry for Stubenranch, setting aside any questions about Scotty's size. So anyways, the game went great. The great defense. They played very well on special teams, and defense was fantastic. And that front line opening up the holes for them running backs. Great job by everybody. Great team effort. They will be taking on Stony Creek on the 5th. So we'll be looking forward to that. That'll be a home game. We'll be covering it. You should be watching it. Also in Oxford, we have girls swim versus Athens on 9/11. This month. Girls volleyball's kicking off with the girls varsity on 9/23 and the 9/27 JV volleyball. We also have cross country coming into play. The soccer team's going to be really good this year. We'll have some scores when we catch them, and we'll bring them back to you next week. So anyways, for Rod Wright, Andy, you missed a good week. Back to you.
Discover the wonderful surprises of local shopping. Watch Let's Take a Walk with Susan Bork or Andy Curtis, weekdays at 10:30 and 6:30, keeping it local.
Welcome to Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication New Scientist. In our first story, the thymus gland has joined the list of artificially engineered organs. Reprogrammed embryonic cells were mixed with fetal thymus cells and grafted onto the kidneys of adult mice where they developed into thymus glands. Growing the organ inside an animal rather than a dish meant it had a constant supply of blood and nutrients and could be another step for organ replacement. In our next story, well, it sounds like the dark plot of a vampire movie. In October, people with Alzheimer's disease will be injected with the blood of young people in the hope that it will reverse some of the damage caused by the condition. The scientists behind the experiment have evidence on their side. Work in animals has shown that a transfusion of young mouse blood can improve cognition and the health of several organs in older mice. It could even make those animals look younger. The ramifications for the cosmetics and pharmaceutical industries could be huge if the same thing happens in people. Disregarding the vampire legends, the idea of refreshing old blood with new harks back to the 1950s when Clive McKay of Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, stitched together the circulatory systems of old and young mice, a technique called heterochronic parabiosis. Then, he found that the cartilage of the old mice soon appeared younger than would be expected. It wasn't until recently, however, that the mechanisms behind this experiment were more clearly understood. In 2005, a team at Stanford University in California found that young blood returned the liver and skeletal stem cells of old mice to a more youthful state during heterochronic parabiosis. The old mice were also able to repair injured muscles as well as young mice could. Spooky things seemed to happen in the opposite direction too. Young mice that received old blood appeared to age prematurely. In some cases, injured muscles did not heal as fast as would be expected. In 2012, Amy Wagers at Harvard University showed that young blood can reverse heart decline in old mice. Her team paired healthy young mice with old mice that had cardiac hypertrophy, a condition which swells the size of their heart, and connected their circulatory systems. After 4 weeks, the old mouse's heart had shrunk to the same size as its younger partner. In this experiment, the young mouse was seemingly unaffected by the old blood. Its heart had not changed in size. Once the researchers had ruled out the effect of reduced blood pressure on the older mice, they identified a protein in the blood plasma called growth differentiation factor 11, or GDF11, that appears to fall with age. To see if it was linked to the rejuvenating effects, the team gave old mice with enlarged hearts daily injections of GDF11 for 30 days. Their hearts decreased in size almost as much as they had in the parabiosis experiments. A year later, the same team showed in mice that daily injections of GDF11 also increases the number of blood vessels and the number of stem cells in the brain, both factors known to improve brain function. A separate team, led by Tony Weiss-Correa at Stanford, performed similar experiments. His team injected blood plasma from young mice into old mice and showed an improvement in the old mice's physical endurance and cognitive function. In both mice and human, GDF11 falls with age. We don't know why it declines, but we know it is involved in several mechanisms that control growth. It is also thought to mediate some age-related effects on the brain, in part by activation of another protein that is involved in neuronal growth and long-term memory. So the billion-dollar question is, would a GDF11 boost give the same effect in humans? Weiss-Correa thinks it will, having taken the next step of injecting young human blood plasma into old mice. His preliminary results suggest that human blood has similar rejuvenating effects for old mice as young mice blood does. We saw these astounding effects, he says. The human blood had beneficial effects on every organ we studied so far. Now, the final step, giving young human blood plasma to old people with a medical condition, is about to begin. Getting approval to perform the experiment in humans has been relatively simple, says Weiss-Correa, thanks to the long safety record of blood transfusions. He warns against swapping blood at home because transfusions need to be screened for disease, matched for blood type, and the plasma needs to be separated out, so don't do it. Certainly, you can't drink the blood, he says, although obviously we haven't tried that experiment. So in early October, a team at Stanford School of Medicine will give a transfusion of blood plasma donated by people under 30 to older volunteers with mild to moderate Alzheimer's. Following the impressive results in animal experiments, the team hopes to see an immediate improvement in the cognition, but Weiss-Correa cautions that it's still very experimental. We will assess cognitive function immediately before and for several days after the transfusion, as well as tracking each person for a few months to see if any of their family members or caregivers report any positive effects, he says. The effects might be transient, but even if it's just for a day, it is proof of a concept that is worth pursuing. Wow. Well, that's it for this edition of Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television, and we'll be right back.